All right, guys, we were in the middle of this one when you left today. So here are a few more so that you can really get this long division thing down and then go into synthetic division. So remember, the first thing you do is divide by the first. So x squared goes into 3x to the fourth, 3x squared times. Then you multiply by all. So 3x squared times the x squared is 3x to the fourth. 3x squared times 6 is 18x squared. Make sure you put it over here because you need to stack it beneath the like term. Now the next thing you do is subtract, so put parentheses around that, subtract all. So this would be a negative 3x to the fourth plus the 3x to the fourth above it. And this would be a negative 18 plus the 17 above it would be a negative 1x squared. So I've done my subtracting, now bring down the other stuff. So bring down negative 9x cubed. Bring down the minus 54x. And bring down the minus 6. Now, I've got to go back and divide the first again. So x squared goes into negative 9x cubed, negative 9x times. Negative 9x times x squared is negative 9x cubed. Negative 9x times positive 6 is negative 54x, and then bump it down here, okay? Now we subtract again. So negative negative is positive 9, with the negative 9 above it cancels out. Negative of a negative 54 is positive 54, with the negative 54 above it cancels out. Just drop the negative x squared down, drop the negative 6 down. So now you're ready to divide again. X squared goes into negative x squared negative 1 times. Negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6. When you subtract, you're going to get the exact same thing. It's going to be negative negative is positive. Those cancel. Negative negative is positive down here with the negative above cancels. So that means 0 remainder. Okay. So things I know. All right. One thing I know is that x squared plus 6 is a factor of the 3x to the fourth polynomial. Okay. Because it divided in evenly. The next thing I know is that my answer to the question is just 3x squared minus 9x minus 1. That's how many times x squared plus 6 divided in evenly. My third thing is the result that this big polynomial that I was dividing into is now equal to the x squared plus 6 that I divided by times the 3x squared minus 9x minus 1 that I got. So my division helped me start my factoring. We're going to do another couple problems like this. We're still going to be doing long division. I want to remind you, since you're dividing by cubic, long division is a have-to situation. Synthetic division is not an option. So I'm going to say, let's do x cubed plus x minus 1. Now, this is the first one you've seen that's going to require placeholders. I start at 6x to the 5th. But notice I don't have an x to the 4th, an x to the 3rd, or an x squared term. So I've got to fill those in as placeholders. 0x to the 4th, 0x to the 3rd, 0x squared, and then plus 3x minus 9. Okay, so this is the first one you've seen with placeholders. So I start with dividing the first term only. So x cubed goes into 6x to the 5th, 6x squared times. Now we're going to multiply everything. So 6x squared times x to the 3rd is 6x to the 5th. 6x squared times x is 6x cubed. Put it over here under your x cubed term. 6x squared times negative 1 is negative 6x squared. So sometimes the placeholders kind of slough out of the problem, and sometimes they're absolutely necessary. You don't know until you start, okay? So negative 6x to the 5th plus 6x to the 5th cancels. Now this would just come down as 0x to the 4th, which is just 0. So that just sort of sloughs out of the problem. So I'm not even going to write it down. It was unnecessary. But look, you have negative 6x cubed with the 0x cubed above it. is negative 6x cubed. And you have negative of negative, which is positive 6x squared, with the 0x squared above it is positive 6x squared. So I finished my subtraction. Now I need to bring down the rest. And now I'm back to divide by the first again. So x cubed in the negative 6x cubed is negative 6. Now multiply by all again. Negative 6 times x cubed is negative 6x cubed. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Bump it over here. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6. Now you're up to subtract again. So negative negative is positive 6. With the negative 6 above it, it goes. 6x squared just comes down because it doesn't have anything to subtract from it. Negative of a negative 6 is positive 6. With the 3 above it is positive 9x. And then negative 6 with a negative 9 is negative 15. Now x cubed is bigger than x squared, so you're done. This is a remainder. Wow, okay, so here's what I know. Number one, x cubed plus x minus 1 is not a factor because it did not divide in evenly, okay? I know that my answer is the number of times it divided in, so that would be 6x squared minus 6. But I also have to say plus, and this is the mixed fraction format, the remainder, which is 6x squared plus 9x minus 15, over what you divided by, which was x cubed plus x minus 1. So guys, when you do this mixed fraction format, remember we said that's like saying, if you say, how many times does 5 go into 18? 5 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. The remainder is 3. So you could say, oh, okay. So 18 divided by 5 is the same thing as saying 3, 3, and 3/5. This is the same, this is the same thing in terms of polynomials. It's kind of that mixed fraction format. Notice the numerator has to be smaller than the denominator in this mixed fraction format. Same thing here. My numerator is smaller because 6x squared is smaller than 1x to the third. X squared smaller than x to the third. Okay. Oh, the last result. This time, if I said, well, what about rewriting this crazy polynomial? I can't write it in factored form. Now what I know is that actually, if I take what I divide by times the number of times it went in, and I add on the remainder. So if I were to take the time to multiply all this out and then add on these extra terms, I would get back to the original. But factored form, you can only have two things multiplied. You can't have this plus and this extra garbage out here. So again, that comes back to saying this is not a factor. So this is something sometimes people ask about, but it's not really as important a result. All right, guys, now we're going to go back to the very first problem we did. The first problem we did, we practiced long division. But remember, if you're dividing by something linear, and this guy is linear, x to the first plus 2 is a linear. If you're dividing by anything linear, I don't know if you can see that, then you're allowed to use synthetic. So now I want to practice synthetic. We're going to get the same answer as when we did long division, but I want you to see how much faster it is to do synthetic, and I'm just reviewing you. You saw this last year, but here's what you need to do to know. If it says divide by x plus 2, you would divide by x plus 2 in long division, but that means divide by x equals negative 2 if you're using synthetic division. So again, it's like saying, remember, if x plus 2 is a factor, then x equals negative 2 is the solution. You're dividing by the solution, essentially. So the difference is that instead of putting a bar like this, like I do with long division, I'm going to put the bar like this. And synthetic is nice because you multiply and add rather than dividing and subtracting and dividing and subtracting. So look, you do 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 7x plus 2. So no x's, just numbers. When you start synthetic, you just take whatever is here and drop it right there. Now your pattern is going to be multiply and add, multiply and add, multiply and add. So look, multiply, -2 times 3 is -6. Now add 2 plus -6 and get -4. Multiply, -2 times -4 is +8. Add -7 plus 8 is 1. Multiply -2 by 1 is -2. Add 2 plus -2 is 0. Box in this. The thing that's boxed in is your remainder. Now, what do I know as a result of the division? Just like on number 1, I've already said this once, I know that x plus 2 is a factor because the division was even. It went in evenly with 0 remainder. I know that my answer is, all right, now watch, this is the ones place, this is x's, this is x squared. So I start out with 3x squared minus 4x plus 1. That's the answer. All right, that's what you got when we did long division with number 1. And again, another result that's important when it's 0 remainder is that you're saying that 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 7x plus 2, you're saying that's equal to what you divided by times the answer, the number of times that went in evenly. So again, the point is that doing division got us started on factoring. And then what we'll try to do is factor this further, but that's not going to happen until tomorrow. We're going to do another synthetic division problem. All right, on this problem, guys, this is the exact same problem we did on number 2. So the outcome is going to be the same. Again, I want to show you that since this is linear, what you're dividing by is linear, then you're allowed to use synthetic, okay? So we're going to practice synthetic division. I also want to remind you that if it tells you to divide by 3x minus 1, well, this is how you would divide if you're using long division. You're actually going to divide by x equals 1/3 if you're using synthetic division. Again, consider if 3x minus 1 equals 0, x equals 1/3. So you divide by the factor for long division, you divide by the solution when you're doing synthetic division. So instead of saying if it's a factor that goes in evenly, I'm saying if it's a solution that goes in evenly. So I'm going to say I'm dividing by 1/3. Make your bar. Go down and over. I just lost my lights in my classroom. Now, I put 6x to the 4th minus 2x cubed minus 15x squared plus 17x plus 3. And I'm looking for placeholders, but my exponents went down, x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x to the 2nd, x to the 1st, and then my ones place. So I don't need a placeholder. I always take this number and put it down. And now I'm ready to start my synthetic division. So 1/3 of 6 is the same thing as 6 divided by 3, that's 2. Add those and get 0. 1/3 of 0, 1/3 times 0 is 0. Add those two. 1/3 of 15, -15, is the same thing as -15 divided by 3, that's -5. Add those two. And 1/3 of 12, let's see, is 12 divided by 3, that's 4. Add those two. Remember, box that in, that's your remainder, okay? So what do I know because I've done the work? So it's the exact same results from number 2, okay? Since I've got a remainder, I know that 3x minus 1 is not a factor, okay? Now, if I said, well, what's the answer to this division problem? Look, here are your ones, x's, x squareds, x cubes. So my answer is 6x cubed minus 15x plus 12. But I have to say plus, and I have to say, well, I got a remainder over what I divided by. So remember, the top has to be smaller than the bottom. So the top is just a plain number. Plain numbers are always smaller than x to the first or x squared or anything else, okay? So I'm going to stop right there on that idea, and then we're going to do one more problem. All right, last problem. I want to do this one because I want you to see placeholders. So again, let me emphasize, what you're dividing by is linear. And if it's linear, yippee, yahoo, you're allowed to use synthetic division. Synthetic's faster and takes less space, so we like synthetic. Okay, so remember, if in long division you were to actually divide by x minus 5, that's the same thing as in synthetic division, you divide by the solution x equals 5, all right? So here I go. I'm going to say 5 into, now 1x to the 5th, but look, I skip x to the 4th, so I have to plug in a 0 for my x to the 4th placeholder. And then negative 21x cubed. But then I skipped from x cubed to x, so I skipped over x squared. So put in a 0 for the x squared. And then I have a minus 98x. But look, I've skipped having a plain number, a ones place out here. So you've got to put in a 0 or it'll mess it up. So if you keep trying and you're not getting the answer you think you're supposed to be getting, it could be that you're forgetting your placeholders. That's usually what happens. So remember, whatever's here, bring it down. Now we're going to start our synthetic. So 5 times 1 is 5. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 plus a negative 21 is 4. 5 times 4 is 20. 0 plus 20 is 20. 5 times 20 is 100. 100 minus 98 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 0 plus 10 is 10. Box that one in, that's your remainder. So what do we know? That x minus 5 did not divide in evenly, so it's not a factor. What else do we know? That the x to the 5th polynomial divided by the x minus 5 polynomial has an answer of, this is ones, x's, x squared, x cubes, x to the 4th. So the answer is 1x to the 4th plus 5x to the 3rd plus 4x squared plus 20x plus 2 plus, now you've got to do that mixed fraction thing and say the remainder is 10 over what you were dividing by, okay? And that is a review of synthetic. All right, good luck finishing everything. I will see you in a day or two.